Start.
I think we're just going to, am I on? Oh, okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Boy, this is a nice crowd, and I'm so excited to see you here. You've just made Charles just that much more nervous now, but I'm sure he'll do really, really good. My name is Teresa Orton, and I'm the director of this museum that's owned by the Daughters of Utah Pioneers. And our little museum, I say little, but it's kind of big if you're wandering around, was built in 1938, and it's owned by the Daughters of Utah Pioneers. And so the things we have here are artifacts and photos and histories of our early Washington County pioneers. And so we invite you to come and stay and go through the museum or come back at another time and visit us. Our events are funded and supported by St. George Rap Tax, Washington County Rap Tax, and Utah Arts and Museum grant funds. So we always want to appreciate them. Little housekeeping, please turn your phones off, which I never remember to do till it rings in the middle of the meeting. The restroom is just outside the door here, if you need that. Today we have Chales Adair, and you live here, right? And he's from Washington City, and his ancestors were part of the early pioneer settlers in Washington City that came with the original cotton mission, starting of the cotton mission. And so we're going to turn the time over to Charles, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Teresa. It's good to be here. Good to see so many in attendance. This is the first presentation of the year, right? So it's making the New Year's resolution and all the historical presentations. Well, as Teresa said, I'm Chales Adair. My wife, stand-up Colleen, she's a very big part of the team here. She's my wife of over 50 years. And of course, we met at BYU. But after BYU, I was commissioned an officer in the Marine Corps, spent 24 years in the Marine Corps. And then after that, worked for Boeing in Oklahoma. And then about 10, 11 years ago, we moved here to the Valley, St. George, Washington. And we live out in a place called Treasure Valley, which is a housing area. But there was a feeling when we came here that this was the place where we were supposed to retire to. We were in Oklahoma. I was retiring from Boeing. Some of my associates said, "Hey, are you going to stay in Oklahoma?" And Oklahoma humidity makes my hair, or my wife's hair, frizzy, okay? So she said, "Let's go where it's a dry climate and my hair is not so uncontrollable." And someone called up out of the blue, and Mike Cuff, and he says, "Hey, they have this thing called Parade of Homes here in St. George, and we're going to go out. Would you like to meet us there?" And we said, "Well, yeah," because we were honestly thinking that we were ready to move. I'd retired, and my family, Colorado, Colleen's from Nevada, so we wanted to move out west. So when we came to this Parade of Homes and we just entered this valley, it was like, welcome home. I've only experienced that 2 other times, or had that feeling something's special. I don't know if you've ever had that or not. And some of you are here kind of shaking your head. Yeah, we feel like we were kind of guided here. And that's what we feel like. I remember the first time I really felt that is I got a military assignment in Scotland, a place called Holy Loch, Scotland. Back in the Cold War, this was in '79, back in the Cold War, the Navy had a submarine site there in Scotland by Dunoon, Scotland. And there was 10 Poseidon submarines that patrolled out of there. They patrolled in the North Atlantic. Each one of those submarines had 16 ICBMs, and each one of those ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, had 10 MIRVs, reentry vehicles, nuclear warheads, with each one of those about the same yield as Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So out of that site, the Soviet Union had 1,600 nuclear warheads pre-planned to strike strategic targets there. So they kept a close eye on that site. And so when we were in Okinawa, Japan, we got orders to go to Scotland, and when I got off the plane, that's when I experienced that, laddie, because my ancestors come from Scotland, right? Adair, yeah. Laddie, welcome home. I mean, I felt that. I felt that. The other time I felt that is in the military. Whenever you get a rank, and I was a major at the time, they sent us to, when you command a General Staff College, Quantico, Virginia. And part of that year's worth of study and education, we would attend some of the battlefields, Civil War battlefields. Have any of you ever been to Gettysburg? Yeah. And walked on that ground at Gettysburg? Did you feel something there?
Sacred ground.
It's sacred ground. There was over 51,000 killed or wounded on that ground. And you can feel it when you go there. Something special. I felt the same thing when we came to this valley. Something special. And as I have studied more about it, and I really didn't know much about my great-great-grandfather, I knew that there was a statue of him here, and I knew he was part of the Cotton Mission, but I didn't know much more than that. But when I came here, I could feel something, and I think that was there was a lot of death and sacrifice, hard work, unbelievable hardship that those early settlers experienced when they came here at St. George. You look at it today, I'm a big golfer. I've got like 12, 13 golf courses I can pick from. And I want to thank my great-great-grandfather when I meet him next and say, hey, Grandpa, thanks for those golf courses. Okay, let's make this kind of an audience participation. I look out here, I see a lot of gray hair and some hair that's kind of missing. So that tells me that we probably got some people that have lived here quite some time. How many's lived here for more than 25 years? Okay, great. You know quite a bit about the history here. And I am no subject matter expert on it. It's just what I have collected, and due to this man right here, upper right, that is Samuel Jefferson Adair, my great-great-grandfather, direct lineage. You can see where I get my great looks. Okay? And this is a little bit about him. So what I'd like to accomplish today is to kind of bring some facts to you regarding how the Cotton Mission started, a little bit about the Cotton Mission, and I just picked one building, which is the old cotton mill. That's kind of historical site, but we've got others we could select from, the tabernacle, the temple. It was dedicated in 77. I mean, we got a lot of footprints and fingerprints all over this valley from our ancestors. But I'm just going to point out a few that I'm personally involved with. And it comes from this gentleman right here. As you can see, he was born, and I tell you a little bit about his history because we live in Dixie, right? Yes. We can't hardly say that anymore. Politically incorrect. But we can say Dixie, we live, yeah. And the reason why it's called that is because most of those early saints that were called to come here knew how to grow cotton. And this man certainly did know how to grow cotton. He must have had quite a reputation because he's the first one that Brigham Young called to be in charge of the first 10 families to come down here and grow cotton. So he was born in South Carolina, as you see, in 1806. He married Jemima Catherine Mangum. So you'll see Adairs on some of these plaques, and you'll see Mangums. That's because this was a family affair. Wherever the Adairs went, quite a few of the Mangums went, okay? So if any of you related to the Mangums, how about the Adairs? You're related to the Adairs. Yeah. Okay. They joined the LDS Church in 1845, and then they went to Nauvoo. Kind of an unlucky time, because shortly after that, that's through persecution, the saints left Nauvoo and went over across the Mississippi to Iowa, and they were thousands of them. And it was a very difficult time. And Samuel Jefferson lost he lost his wife and 3 of his children, as you can see, from cholera. He adopted a boy there, David Seacrest, who had lost his parents, and so there was quite a few death experiences there, and people just were trying to take care of people. And so even though he was a widower, my grandfather, he took on this boy, David Seacrest. He came with the company of saints to Salt Lake Valley, arriving September 1852. I did come across in his history where it looked like he came across with one of the first companies that Brigham Young brought out to kind of scout the territory, in the military terms, to recon the terrain, okay, and left his family back in Iowa. So he came out here, scouted the terrain, did whatever the brethren wanted him to do, and then he went back to get his family. But he was asked around Mount Pisgah to stay there and grow food to help provision the companies that were leaving there and coming out west. So he stayed there. I'm sure because of the loss of his wife and children, he was trying to recover. And anyway, he stayed there and didn't come out to Salt Lake until 1852. One of the most interesting things I came across in his history is that as they were crossing the plains, got into western Wyoming, or northeastern, before they came down into the valley, through the mountains and into Salt Lake. I guess he was out hunting, and he came across 3 children tied to a milk cow. Now that sounds just too wild to believe, doesn't it? But he found 3 children. Their last name was Chestnut. A boy and 2 girls, small. And he found them tied to a milk cow. And so he went over, and they had been tied to that cow for a number of days. And they told him about their family hired 2 men. They were not LDS. They were coming out through Salt Lake to go to California. But prior to entering the valley, those 2 men killed their parents, and the children begged them not to kill them, and so they tied them to this milk cow and left them. And Samuel Jefferson Adair came across them. He adopted them. He adopted the 2 girls. The boy, another family wanted to adopt the boy. So, he not only had his family, but he had David Seacrest and also 2 of the Chestnut children. He was called by Brigham Young to be in charge of the first 10 families to open up the cotton mission. They arrived in 15 April 1857. And you can see that letter on the just below his face there, and it says, I translated it for you, it says Payson Ward U, I guess that's Utah or U Company. I don't know what that stands for. Anybody know what that? Utah County. Oh, Utah County. Great. I knew I could get more information from you. You look like you're full of wisdom there. Okay, so Payson Ward, Utah County, and it says Brigham Young. This is his acceptance letter he sent back to Brigham Young. He says, herein we report ourselves according to the instructions in your 14th general epistle as cotton raisers and indigo manufacturers, and we are at your service. You know, we say they weren't educated people. I can't write that well, can you? I mean, that sounds very distinguished and educated. And it's signed Samuel Adair, Joseph Adair, John M. Adair, William Mangum, James Mangum, Thomas Adair, Harrison Pierce, and Jacobs Nowlin. Okay. So that's their formal acceptance. And so it took them about a month to get down here, and they arrived on the 15th of April, 1857. And Samuel Jefferson, he stayed here for 20 years. 20 years. And as I've studied the hardships that those early pioneers experienced here, my hat is off to him. I thought I had it a little tough in the Marine Corps when I went to the Persian Gulf and took 660 Marines and wound up in Kuwait City after we fought that war. I thought I had it a little tough. But after I read what these pioneers did in this valley, it's unbelievable what they experienced. And only the tough stayed. There was about 50%, 40 to 60% turnaround of over the 600 families that were called to come down here, from 57 to 65, something like that. Okay. So he served 20 years, I think it was. I knew he probably worked on the tabernacle, everybody did, and also on the temple, so I think he probably said, you know what, I'm going to stay until that temple is dedicated. And so right after that dedication is when he was released from the Cotton Mission, and Brigham Young said, go settle the Arizona territories. So they went from here down to Concho, Arizona. I know they spent some time there. They spent some time in Nuderoso, Arizona. Anybody been to Nuderoso? Yeah. Nuderoso, that's where he passed away. He is 83 then. And his son wrote a letter back to back to Salt Lake and notified them of his death. And the last words was, essentially, he was obedient and always obeyed the brethren. Something like that. That's what he was known for. Obedient and obeyed the brethren. So he did what he was asked to do. So I tried to find his grave. There was a record that he was buried in St. John's, Arizona. I couldn't find it, but I need to go back to Nuderoso and see if I can find his grave, because I think that's where it's at. His wife, Ann, that he married while he was here, remember when he came here, he was a widower. And in 64, he married Ann, which was also a widower and from Denmark. She was originally from Denmark. So that's a brief history about my great-great-grandfather. And you probably heard of his son, Charles Newton. Sometimes or Samuel Newton, sometimes they get the names mixed up a little bit. But he was Samuel Jefferson, the original, in charge of the first 10 families, and he brought his son, Charles Newton. And Newton, he went out with Jacob Hamblin a lot, and there's some interesting stories about him that we don't have time to talk about. Now, we're supposed to 45 minutes, right? Okay. All right, so the best way to convey information is put some on paper so that you can read it while I'm kind of covering some of these topics. Now on the right, anybody recognize that statue? Yeah, that's the Washington Historic. Carmen, you know, right? He's right there looking at you every day when you open up that old school, right? Well, that's him. And of course, you recognize the, let's see if, yeah, you recognize that right there? Tell us about that.
Oh, that's the marker at the head of the Adair Spring,
Yeah.
which provides secondary water even today to residents of Washington.
Yeah. So when they came here, you know, like I say, he was the leader of the first 10 families to start the cotton mission. They settled at Adair Springs. And if you go there today, you know where the city center is, or the historical center there. If you go down and turn left at the Sinclair station on 200 and go up about a block and a half, you'll see Adair Springs. That's the monument you'll see right there. Okay? But you won't see a spring. You'll look around and where's the water? So I did that. And I asked the former mayor, we played golf at the same place, and so I said, hey, what do they do with Adair Springs? Because he lives down the hill a little bit, and he says, oh, I use Adair Springs to still irrigate my property. I says, where's this water? And so I went there, and I looked around, and there is a metal plate in the middle of the sidewalk, just to the right of where that monument is, and I could hear something. And so I, with tremendous force and power, I lifted that up with one hand, and there it was. The most beautiful, fresh water I think I've ever seen. And it still flows today. And you finish the story.
Oh, well, I live next door to the mayor, Kenny Nielsen.
Yeah.
We use the Adair water to irrigate our lawns once a week.
Yeah.
We each have a turn, and based on how many shares we own and how much time we have. And we take our turn and we turn it out and flood irrigate our lawns, and then turn it down to the next person. And we just have to water once a week.
So, there's the Adair Springs. It must be great water because they had a choice of several areas. You know, I play golf at Green Springs, and I look at that spring all the time, and it looks like good water, but for some reason they chose that water right there. And so, when they came in, they took the boxes off their wagons, they dug them in the hills, they grabbed willows, mud, rocks, whatever they could, and they made them some makeshift shelter. Okay? Yeah. So, about 20 days later, Robert Dockery Covington brought another 28 families down here, and shortly after that, 2 days later, Isaac C. Haight. Anybody know how he's listed here? Isaac C. Haight. Yeah.
He's state president.
He was a state president. Where was it? Parowan? Or Cedar City, okay. So he was a stake president. You know, the church works still today the same way. He was asked to go down and organize those saints. So he did, and you can see what he did there. All right, so they had a meeting. Covington was asked to be the branch president. You know, it's still, any of you been bishops or branch presidents here? Well, anyway, they like him to be married, okay, for some reason. Samuel Jefferson was not married. Yeah. So, these are the people that were called to various positions. So Covington is the branch president or the leader here. William R. Slade and James D. McCullough. Anybody related to any of these people? Okay, great. Justices of the peace. You can kind of see how they organized communities. And this was happening all over the West. As pioneers moved in, settled, there was a method in which they used to organize themselves. And so you can see the pattern here. So since most of them were LDS, you know, they chose a branch president. And then the other two, Slade and McCullough, justices of the peace, John Hawley and James Matthews, constables. They also called William R. Slade and George Hawley and G.W. Spencer as school trustees, and Samuel Jefferson Adair was appointed as sheriff. Okay? So in 64, you know, Ann came down with another group, and that's how they met. They were sealed. Well, I remember the story. Who was it that came and had the vision at the pulpit when he was speaking to the saints? Snow, Lorenzo R. Snow, right? And he just paused and he says, brothers and sisters, I know how we are going to get the church out of debt, and I know how the Lord will be able to bless us. Let's just go back to Malachi chapter 3 where he says, where have you've robbed the Lord through your tithes and offerings, you know. And that's not so much for us to bless the church and the work, but really you'll find out it's more the vehicle in which the Lord can bless us, okay? And those saints in this area really need a blessing. And so, tithing. And so, why did I bring that up? When he met Ann, somebody, I think it was Lorenzo Snow, said, hey, have you been sealed to Ann yet? And he says, well, no. You know, it's 700 miles round trip up to the endowment house. And, you know, I've got to plant crops in the summer, take care of them in the summertime, or in the spring to plant crops. And summertime, take care of them, and harvest in the winter, and the weather's too bad in the winter. Don't plant your crops. Go get sealed. And so he did. He lived true to, he was obedient, okay? All right, they named the city after the first president, George Washington. We all know that, okay? No better man to be named after or have a city named after, George Washington. And then they named the area Dixie. Let's hear that again. Go Dixie. You know, in honor of their southern heritage. And we should be proud of that, okay? We should be proud of that. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the cotton mill. I just chose that. I could have chose the tabernacle or the temple, but since we are talking about the cotton mission, you can see that picture off to the right. That's kind of later on. But the construction of the mill started in 1866, and the first story of it was occupied in 67, and they raised another story and a half, and that was available in 70, okay? And at the time, it was the largest cotton mill factory west of the Mississippi. Okay? For a short time while the cotton industry flourished, partly due to the Civil War, remember, Joseph Smith saw the Civil War. That's one of the reasons why they came out west, not to escape that war, but to escape persecution. But they knew that war was going to happen. Didn't know exactly when, but he knew how it would start, and it was going to happen. And so all of those saints and all of those that were coming to Zion from overseas, I mean, they fled to the Salt Lake Valley and missed that war. My first counselor in the stake presidency in Lawton, Oklahoma, wrote a book, and he researched out where the Confederate Army actually Lee sent a representative out to talk to Brigham Young and try to talk him into supporting the Confederacy during the war. I found that interesting, because Lee knew that how the church was persecuted by mostly the northern people. Okay, And so we needed cotton. We need to be self-sufficient. That was the mission. That was the plan. We're going to come out west and we're going to be self-sufficient and be able to worship according to the dictates of our own conscience. And so they came out and started building this cotton mill while the cotton production in the southern United States dwindled. Of course, when the Civil War ended, the cotton market softened and made it difficult for the Washington factory to compete. The factory never made much money, but it helped to hold the pioneers in Dixie with work and income. It also supplied cloth that reduced the amount of work required in the home to produce clothing, okay? So, you can see some old pictures there of the cotton mill. So the factory closed in 1904 officially. Everybody left it. And the building deteriorated until part of the roof fell in, starting in 1935. Now I've got another slide to talk about that. Restored building served as a temporary CCC camp. Yeah. And of course it's put on the registry. So let's talk about the CCC camps. Yeah.
Maybe somebody can tell us about where the Muddy mission came into that part of the history.
Saints were sent down to northern Nevada and northwestern Nevada.
Yes.
We've all drove past that going to Las Vegas. You see, the muddy river. And they were still looking for fertile ground and water to grow cotton. And so saints were sent down there also to grow cotton. That's how it started. That's part of the cotton mission, yeah. Yeah, they tried to grow cotton everywhere they found soil and water. They tried to grow cotton. That was their main mission, was cotton, okay? So, Civilian Conservation Corps, anybody work with the CCC camps? Yeah.
Fish Lake National Forest, I worked for the Forest Service and supervised teenagers building log wooden fence.
Yeah.
This was in the 80s, 1980s.
Yeah. So, this came about after the Depression. Roosevelt was elected, and my wife was telling me this morning, hey, I just read a book on this. It wasn't Roosevelt's idea. It was the Secretary of Interior. Was she the Secretary of Interior?
Secretary of Labor.
Secretary of Labor.
To ever be in a president's cabinet. And
Yeah.
she was the one that came up with the idea of let's put them to work. And this is actually one of her ideas.
Yeah, more than 25% of the males in the United States didn't have work. And so they came up with this idea of the government hiring these men to go out and beautify America. And most of them went to work on national parks. And we actually had a CCC company here at Washington, right where the old cotton mill was. Yeah.
My husband's grandfather was one of those men that were down here.
Yeah. So he stayed after. Yeah. Okay. So the mill served as a central hub. Now you see that picture, you see that building in front, that's not there anymore. The old mill is the building back. You see it right there? And you can see they used this as a headquarters and supply depot because they had camps. There was some went and worked on Zion National Park, okay? There were some at Laverkin. And the company here, their main mission was to, as you can see right here, develop springs and water troughs for livestock, okay? And another thing I didn't know about was see Warner Valley? They built fences and reseeded thousands of overgrazed acres with hardy grasses. Remember the scenes from the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma? where they had gone in and cultivated all of the prairie, and then the wind came and it just blew all that topsoil away. And so it all landed in Warner Valley. And so anyway, they built fences and reseeded thousands of overgrazed acres with hardy grasses to prevent the Dust Bowl happening again, okay? Another thing I didn't know is pest control. That's one of the reasons we came here. I mean, Oklahoma, we had a pretty healthy crop of insects. And so what they did is, as you can see, thousands of acres against Mormon crickets, okay, and infestations, and burrowing rodents that impacted irrigation systems. And so they had CCC men that went around and did that, okay? The main purpose of the old cotton mill was, this is what they did. It was a storage area for food, equipment, and clothing for other companies that were, like Zion that worked at Zion. I think Silver Reef, there were some out there, Laverkin. I mean, they were all over, wherever ditches and canals and roads and trails had to be built. That's what the CCC camps did, okay? So, and additionally, they set up shops where enrollees were taught mechanics, blacksmith, and carpentry. And of course, they repaired the equipment there in the old mill also. I didn't know that. Did you? Any of you know that? Yeah. Okay. So they paid those men that worked for the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, $30 a month. They were required, if they were married, had a family, to send $25 back home. So they had $5 to spend. And I think that's about $100 now in today's money if you had $5. And so anyway, they were a boost to the local economy also. The CC ended at the beginning of World War II. There were 250 throughout the nation that served in the CCC camps. There were 144 camps throughout the nation, and they existed from 1933 to 42. Okay? Didn't know that about the cotton mill. Yeah.
What was the name of the secretary? I did. You said a woman, but I didn't know.
I don't know. You have to ask my memory. Yeah.
Okay. We'll look it up.
Just Google it or Chat GPT or Gemini. It's amazing what you can learn. Yeah. Okay, just to finish up the cotton mill, this is the rest of the story. Walter Cleaver of Washington bought the factory with the intent of refurbishing it. If you recognize any of these names, Norma, anybody know Norma? Okay. Canizario, something like that. Pretty close? Okay.
Francis Perkins.
Yeah, purchased the cotton factory in what's that?
Francis Perkins.
Oh,
Our department.
Francis Perkin, Department of Labor, under Roosevelt. Yeah. Okay, and then in 1993, Hiram and Gail Smith, live out in Gunlock till he passed away, purchased the factory and then sold it in 98 to Star Nursery Company. Okay. Anything else to add to this?
Question.
Yeah.
Being new here, where is this located?
You know where Telegraph Street is? You know where Walmart is?
Right.
Okay? If you're still heading east and go down off the hill from Walmart, you'll see Star Valley, or the nursery there. That's the old cotton mill right there. Yeah, there's an old pretend water wheel, that powered it there in the park. You'll see it there. Yeah. Okay, the Cotton Mission. I think I got a couple more slides here, and then we ought to finish pretty much on time. Okay, the Cotton Mission existed from 1857 to 1870. So, interesting story. Jacob Hamblin was sick in 54, and a man was sent up to Parowan to get some medicine. And he ran across this lady by the name of Nancy Anderson. She was a convert to the church from Tennessee, and she provided the first cotton seeds to take to Jacob Hamblin down at the Indian Mission, or Indian settlement there on Santa Clara. You've all been to Jacob Hamblin's home. Since you're new, have you visited Jacob Hamblin's home? Yeah, okay, great. All right, and so they planted the cotton there. There was just a little sack of it, okay? Just a piece of cloth with cotton seeds in it, and she tied it off. You know, what prompted these people to bring stuff like that out west? Like, you know, apple seeds and oats and wheat and cotton, of all things, cotton. Well, that's how the first cotton was grown here, was this lady by the name of Nancy Anderson gave it to the man that Jacob Hamblin sent up to get some medication for him. Jacob Hamblin, of course, was restored to full health. So they planted it with good results. And they sent a handful of fluffy cotton up to Brigham Young. And there was a big article. It was like, celebration time. We can grow cotton in southern Utah. Here's the proof, okay? And so there was a big story in the Deseret News. So from 55 to 56, 30 yards of cotton cloth was sent to Salt Lake City as proof and quality. I guess they need to know that we have enough, you know, we can produce enough volume and it's of good quality to make cloth out of. Now, one of Jacob Hamblin's wives, Rachel, happened to know how to spin wool or cotton and loom it up into cloth. Who knew that was going to? Anyway, that's how they got the first how many yards? 35 yards?
It was bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Okay. Okay, first 30 yards, okay? So we have got the Cotton Mission ready to go. We've got, you know, just like developing any kind of system, I developed weapon systems for Boeing, and you know what? You dream this stuff up, you come up to the requirements, you build a prototype, you test it, and by golly, it works. Let's go for full production. So that's what we have here. So, if I could get the right button, in 1855-56, 30 yards, and then in April 57, that is what prompted Brigham Young to say, okay, let's send cotton growers down to southern Utah. And so that's how Samuel Jefferson Adair got selected. Okay? And so in 57 they arrived. Those called, and more families came. There were 28 with Covington group, and it kept growing and growing, okay? So in 58, one report mentions that was 575 pounds of cotton produced. Handmade cotton gin developed by Zadok Judd. It's amazing how they could, out of a little bit of metal and wood, fashion a mechanism, a machine in which to comb the seeds out of that cotton. Okay? Okay, in 58, that's when they went into full production. 150, yeah, I don't know where they got the volume, but 156,000 pounds of seed cotton was planted on 400 acres. Okay? And he yielded about 70,000 pounds of ginned cotton. In 61, additional 309 families called to settle the St. George area. In 57 to 71, officially the Cotton Mission days. In 1869, the Transcontinental Railroad provided cheap southern state's cotton to Utah, so the cotton industry in southern Utah was no longer viable, was not cost effective. Okay? All right, I think this is my last slide, and we're pretty much on time. Okay. Once again, about 57 to 1870 was officially the Cotton Mission period, or the Cotton Days period. Okay. So, just kind of a summation. 1850, there was a small experimental yields, okay? 61 to 65, peak production with tens of thousands to over 100,000 pounds per year was produced. That seems an awful lot to me. Okay, and then of course we talked about the Civil War was 1862 to 65, 61, 65. Civil War is over with. Cotton production starts again in the southern states, and then it wasn't cost effective to produce it here in Washington because they had the Transcontinental Railroad that went to Salt Lake so they could get cheaper cotton from the south. Okay. 1860, as we talked about, and then in southern cotton production was very challenging. These are some of the hardships that they suffered. Yes?
Any idea why it was more economical to produce it in the south than here?
Yeah, because they could produce it in more volume. I mean, if you're in the south, they don't have irrigation problems. They have great soil. They were very experienced growers. I mean, the yield per acre was much higher. I mean, well, after the Civil War, they had indentured labor then, I guess. Okay. All right, so these are some of the challenges they had. Taming the Virgin River was a challenge. Every year they had to replace dams that they put up. Of course, they would try to dam the Virgin River so that they could dig a canal, get water to good cropland, okay? And every spring floods, every big torrential rain in the mountains, the water would come down and wash their dams out. Because the only thing they had to produce to build dams with, was willow, brush, rocks, logs, mud, okay? And those floods would just wash that out. They would have to replace these dams sometimes 2 or 3 times in one season, okay? Extreme challenge there. Okay, another thing was the summer heat was fairly extreme. Okay, I don't know if you've noticed that or not, but it does get warm here. Okay, and we normally get our air conditioning car. We go into Costco air conditioning. We get our food we want. We come out and we get we go to air conditioning home, and we don't even have to labor in it hardly. But they did, and they had no relief for the summer heat other than the shade and probably wetted rags and so forth. Okay. Annual rainfall wasn't that much, 6 to 8 inches. The soil was fertile, but useless without water, and some fields contained alkali. It always comes to the surface in the wintertime. It's down in the water table water, and then when that evaporates, it brings that alkali right to the surface. How many of you got alkali in your yards right now? Yeah. Okay, so the challenges was a warm climate, mosquito infestation. With mosquitoes, what kind of disease? Malaria. They didn't know what that was. They called it ague. But I mean, you run a fever, you're tired, you're weak, your face is chalky, yellowish, okay? And that was the reason why so many families came here. They looked at these beleaguered saints here, these pioneers in southern Utah, and I'm sure the women turned to their husbands and said, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so between 40 and 60% didn't last here. They had a tremendous turnover. Okay? I don't know why I'm always doing that, but anyway. Okay, so mosquito infestation, malnutrition, overwork and exhaustion, lack of doctors and medicine, sanitation, so they suffered from malaria, dysentery, typhoid, and so forth. It was a challenge.
May I just say something? Maybe some of you know Susan Hancock, and she's quite the historian in our area, particularly out in the Washington Fields. She said regarding malaria, they were not sure what it was, and they finally decided it was caused from the night air. So in their cabins and all over, they would block any of the cool air coming in at night over their doorways. Can you imagine the swelter? Because that's when they were sure the malaria came from.
They thought it was gases off of the swamps or the marshes, okay?
Malaria is Spanish for mal is bad and area is air. So bad air.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Good to know, Stuart. Yeah. Okay, Washington County had highest mortality rates in Utah. More than 50% of the newborn children died. Yeah. Between 57 and 70, mission retention rate was, like I said, 40 to 60%. Approximately 600 families were sent down here. And I'll end with this. You know, as we read about our history, which is humbling to read some of the accounts, and to my grandfather's account, he never went into the suffering part of it. He was more of a factual person. Job's got to be done, so kids, let's go do it. It's not going to help to whine, okay? Think twice before saying nothing, that type of thing. But I'll end with this, that I came up with this after you read their accounts, that their most abundant crop was faith and hope that they built in themselves and in their lives and in their families to endure the suffering and sacrifice that they had to deal with in southern Utah. And you look around now, and there's no more beautiful spot. And we've been quite a few places. You take the right coast, the left coast, Oklahoma, Washington, D.C. area, Okinawa, Japan, Scotland. All over Scotland. I really like Scotland. And of course the Persian Gulf. You can have the Persian Gulf. But there's no more beautiful place today, and we own it to our ancestors. We drink from the wells that they dug. Thank you for being here.
Does anybody have any questions for Charles? Oh, I think you did a great job. Again, thank you very much. Very, very good. Yes. We are so happy to have just excellent presenters and fun times that we have once a month. Next month we have a presentation about Santa Clara and the traditions, and it's going to be a very fun and exciting little event. Again, thank you to Charles. There are ladies and people in the audience that are in pioneer dress, and it's because the Arts Design Cultural Tour is going on. So you will see them around town today. They're telling their pioneer stories. It's very fun. And here in our meeting room, we are going to be having a video running until 3 o'clock about the historic St. George Live Tour that was here in St. George for many, many years. If you know about that, if you don't know about that, come and stay anyway. So thank you again for coming, and hopefully you'll come back and enjoy the museum. Thank you very much.